Former Chief Counsel for the House Judiciary Committee and former Staff Director for the House Government Reform Committee, and Ian Pryor, Communications Director for American Crossroads. It's nice to have you both. You both have very different perspectives on whether or not Rubio can recover from the moment in the debate and the finish in New Hampshire. Ian, why do you believe he can?
Well, I think we all need to step back from our fifth cup of coffee today. And, you know, he had a bad moment at the most inopportune time. His momentum is stunted. But you go back to the presidential winners of the past 36 years, and virtually all of them have had a moment in a primary where their momentum has been stunted. And how they respond to adversity is how they define their presidential campaign. So I very much see an opportunity for Marco Rubio to pull himself off the mat, get back in the fight, and really define who he is as a candidate and show that he can be the candidate that can beat whether it's Bernie Sanders or Hillary Clinton in the fall.
And Julian, why are you unclear whether or not he can survive it?
Well, I don't know whether I don't know if he can or not. I think it remains to be seen. I think what Ian said is absolutely right. I think he did have a momentary fall. It's hard to know whether or not that will continue as we get into Nevada and South Carolina. He is a candidate that Democrats fear. Democrats do not want to go up against, say, a Marco Rubio or Kasich, a Governor Kasich. These are very, very formidable candidates in the general election. I think the problem for the Republican Party right now is that, you know, there's this theory that the anti-establishment is ascendant and the establishment is in decline. I think that's wrong. I think what's happening is that the establishment candidates, Rubio, Kasich, Bush, are all dividing the establishment vote, which is probably about 50% of the vote, and Trump is getting a free pass. And Trump will continue to remain at this, say, 30-35% ceiling where he is until the kind of establishment coalesces around one candidate. They take that one vote that would then go to that one candidate and stop giving Trump this pass. But, you know, Trump in a general election, 60% of voters have an unfavorable view of Donald Trump. So I think most of the Republicans who do this professionally think Donald Trump is a disaster and don't think Ted Cruz would be much better.
You said it very well, Julian. You're mapping out the position of many that are talking about the battle of the establishment and what impact that might be having. Ian, I'm curious what you think about what Julian said about the fact that there just are too many candidates still and no one really that's going after Trump.
Well, you know, I think there was a little bit of premature optimism that after Iowa, Rubio would come out of New Hampshire like a ball of fire and he'd be able to coalesce the establishment around him. It didn't happen, but we still have South Carolina, Nevada, and then there are 11 primaries on March 1st. So I think you are going to see that. It may not come until March 2nd, but look, it's only 3 weeks away, and I think at the end of this thing, you're going to have a three-way fight between Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, and whoever emerges from that Kasich, Bush, Rubio logjam with Christie now out. Which, you know, I'd rather be in that position
He's not
than
out
a
yet,
front
by
runner.
the way. I just want to make that clear. I get it. I get it. Everyone's talking about it today. You're right to point it out, but we don't have his official, you know, suspension yet, and there's been some false reporting of that, so I just want to be clear on it. You know, we seem to be having a familiar conversation about the Republican Party, though, if you compare it to the last presidential cycle, which is whether or not the infighting amongst the party and trying to get to that final candidate will actually damage the eventual candidate when there is one. In fact, Reince Priebus, I'm going to go to you next, Julian. Reince Priebus just talked about this, the head of the RNC on our program, so I want to play a little bit of that sound.
4 years ago, it wasn't so much that I was worried about the sniping. I didn't like 23 debates in a traveling circus, and so we've tried to get control over that. But I also remember said many times that, you know, cutting the number of debates was important, but, you know, I can't, the party chairman can't control everyone's mouth, but the party chairman can control how long you have to kill each other.
I mean, I guess that's true, Julian. Is Reince Priebus going to be able to do it this time around?
Well, you know, as a Democrat, we like to see Republicans cutting each other up. That's that's something that we get popcorn for. So, but I think it goes back to Reagan's 11th Amendment about not hurting your fellow Republicans. I think the other existential debate, though, that's going on that's similar to 2012 is whether the Republican Party is going to field a candidate that is competitive in the general election. Donald Trump is not competitive in the general election. 6 out of 10 voters don't like him. Ted Cruz is probably not competitive in the general election. The general election has been very unfavorable to ideological hard right or hard left candidates. Marco Rubio, very competitive, a guy I like very much, even though I think he would be bad for the Democratic Party because he's such a formidable candidate. John Kasich, very, very formidable candidate if he could get the money and the name recognition as he goes into the South and some of the Super Tuesday states. But that kind of remains to be seen. But the major question for Republicans is, do you want a Marco Rubio or John Kasich or even a Jeb Bush, who I think is a flawed candidate? Do you want one of these establishment candidates who can appeal not only to the Republican base, but can have cross-party appeal and appeal to independents as well? And that's a struggle that the Republicans kind of haven't really answered the question about.
Well, and so one of the things that Marco Rubio is talking a lot about, and so it'll be interesting if that is appealing to Republicans in these early primaries, and whether or not it's a combination of a few of those camps that makes the ticket that Republicans get behind and is appealing in the general election. Julian and Ian, hope to have you both back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.